This final chapter, Chapter 6, contains 6 quiz questions to test your understanding of the materials covered in this module. Question 1. A company has $100 million of a 3-year bank loan priced at 3-month LIBOR plus 50 basis points and is considering purchasing the following cap. Notional 100 million, 3-year maturity, 7% strike, premium 1.65%, settlement frequency quarterly. Assuming the swap rate for 3 years is 6% quarterly rate and the cap has 12 reset periods, what is the maximum all-in cost, including the annual basis point equivalent of the upfront premium? Please use appropriate time value of money considerations. The 4 possible answers follow. Solution to question 1. The maximum all-in cost for the borrower is reached when the cap is exercised, which leaves the borrower, if we ignore the premium for now, paying LIBOR plus 50 basis points under the loan and receiving LIBOR minus 7% under the cap for a total annualized cost of 7.5%. The upfront premium of 165 basis points would work out to exactly 55 basis points annually if we ignored the time value of money, which would bring the total maximum cost to 8.05%. Since time value money considerations are likely to add a few basis points to this amount, we begin suspecting that the correct answer is 8.105%, so answer C instead of B. This is confirmed by opening in Excel worksheet question 1 solution the PMT operator and setting a value, as you can see, of 6% divided by 4 for the rate, 12 for the number of periods, minus 165 for the PV, 0 for the FV, and hitting OK, revealing a PMT of around 15 basis points, and then multiplying that number by 4 to reach an annualized premium of roughly 60.5 basis points. The time value of money adjusted all-in cost is thus seen to be 8.105%, consistent with answer C. Question 2. An investor purchases a floating rate note yielding LIBOR plus 100 basis points, along with a LIBOR floor struck at 4.5% to assure a minimum return. To eliminate the floor's upfront premium, she also sells an out-of-the-money cap at 8.5% with a notional equal to 3 times the floor's notional. If we are drawing graphs in the way taught in this module, which of the diagrams below represents the investor's exposure after she implements this strategy? The 4 permissible answers follow. Solution to question 2. Since the investor's exposure arises under a floating rate note, her exposure diagram prior to any hedging looks presumably as follows, based on our discussion from Chapter 1, where the y-axis shows the interest revenues for the investor from the FRN. Of course, LIBOR would be rising as we move further towards the right and declining towards the left. The purchase of LIBOR floors on a notional equal to the principal of the FRN puts a floor on the minimum revenues in the diagram on the left, causing its shape to change as shown now in blue. Finally, the sale of LIBOR caps for 3 times the FRN's principal to eliminate the upfront premium exposes the investor to losses if LIBOR exceeds the strike of these caps, which happens on the diagram's right, causing the investor's total interest revenues from that point onward to begin declining, as shown now in green. Thus, the correct answer is C. Question 3. In the preceding question, at what level of LIBOR does the investor's all-in return reach 0? Here are the 4 permissible answers. Solution to question 3. The aggregate revenues for the investor from the FRN, cap, and floor combined equal L plus 1 plus the payoff under the floor minus the payoff under the 3 caps. When LIBOR rises above the 8.5% strike of the short cap, the above expression becomes simply payoff under the note minus payoff under the cap, which equals 0 if LIBOR is 13.25%. Thus, the correct answer is C as in Charles. Question 4. Using the cap and floor prices from worksheet grid, assume a borrower has a $10 million 5-year loan outstanding at 3-month LIBOR minus 25 basis points, that the borrower purchases a 5-year cap struck at 8.5% and sells floors struck at 4% to bring the upfront premium down to 0. Ignoring the odd basis point here and there to keep the math for the upfront premium simpler, calculate the notional amount of floors that needs to be sold under this strategy and the all-in annualized cost to the borrower if LIBOR reaches 0. Here are the 4 permissible answers. Solution to question 4. The 5-year cap struck at 8.5% costs an upfront 41 basis points, while the 5-year floor struck at 4% earns 7 basis points. Therefore, by selling floors with a notional of $60 million, the borrower ends up paying upfront in basis points 41 minus 6 times 7, i.e. receives 1 basis point, which we will round off to 0 as allowed by the instructions. If LIBOR reaches 0, the borrower's total cost becomes payment under the loan, L minus 25, plus 6 times the payment under the floor, which reaches 23.75%. So the correct answer is C as in Charlie. Question 5. Assume you marketed successfully the 2 alternative Seagull structures from Chapter 3 to 2 separate borrowers, each with a $100 million 5-year loan at LIBOR plus 1%. All market data remain as they stood in that discussion and can be found in worksheet grid. The 2 alternative combinations for the Seagull structures are repeated in this table for your convenience, with all notionals equal to $100 million. Here they are, Seagull 1 and Seagull 2. If shortly after closing, vols for caps and floors increase to 25%, would your customers have gains or losses from a mark-to-market perspective? Here are the 4 possible answers. Solution to question 5. We need simply to calculate the value of each position before and after the increase in vol and compare the aggregate outcome to the original state. Here are the numbers you should have been able to produce. This table contains all required calculations and reveals for Seagull 1 a loss of some $0.64 million versus for Seagull 2 a gain of some $0.32 million. So the correct answer is C as in Charlie. We might ask if this result is consistent with our intuition. Certainly, Seagull 2 appeared to have a better chance than Seagull 1 of making a profit when vols increase, since under Seagull 1, the company is long only 1 option and short 2, while under Seagull 2, the borrower is long 2 options and short 1 only. Seagulls are indeed often distinguished on precisely whether they are long or short vega. At times when vols are high and appear to offer value for a seller, Seagull 1 becomes more attractive on a relative basis. Whereas when vols are low and appear to offer value for a buyer, Seagull 2 becomes arguably the more attractive alternative. But we will have more to say about this when we study the vol skew in a more advanced module. This completes our discussion of question 5. Question 6. Assume a Turkish company has borrowed 100 million Turkish lira for 4 years at the 3-month Turkey interbank offered rate, here referred to as TIBOR, plus 2.75%. The 3-month TIBOR spot and forward curve is inverted, with TIBOR spot at 20%, and each successive TIBOR forward after that 0.5% lower than the preceding one. The implied volatility is 30%. The borrower purchases a 100 million Turkish lira 4-year cap on 3-month TIBOR, struck at 20%. To eliminate the upfront premium from the cap, the borrower sells a 4-year floor on 3-month TIBOR, also struck at 20%, but whose notional amount, rounded to the nearest million Turkish lira, is sufficient to generate a premium exactly equal to that of the cap. If TIBOR during the life of the loan resets at 15% for an entire year, what is the effective interest cost of the loan during that year, taking into account the loan, cap, and floor? Here are the 4 permissible answers. Solution to question 6. We first input the data we were given into this worksheet, question 6 solution, which shows the cap and floor pricing model for the inverted TIBOR curve. We observe that the 4-year 20% cap costs the borrower an upfront 333 basis points, and that the 4-year 20% floor earns the borrower 1,275%. Therefore, the notional amount in millions of Turkish lira for the floor that would eliminate the upfront premium altogether needs to be set at 100 times the ratio of the premia, 333 over 1275, which is 26 million Turkish lira. Thus, on 26% of his loan, the borrower pays a minimum 20%, while on the remaining 74% he pays TIBOR, in each case plus 2.75%. So if TIBOR equals 15%, the borrower pays the 275 margin plus on 74% the 15%, and on the remaining 26% of the loan 20% interest, which comes to 19.05%. Therefore, the correct answer is C as in Charles. This completes the quiz as well as the whole of part 3 and this entire module on managing interest rate exposure.